Hey, it's Fitz. Thanks for checking out the Rock Radio podcast. Quick plug about ROC Vox recording and production. We just did a whole bunch of audiobooks. Self-published authors are our new best friends. If you're a self-published author and would like to find out how you can make your publication an audiobook, please feel free to reach out. There's information on our website, rockvox.com, or you can send me an email, fitz@rockvox.com. Of course, we're open for all other types of productions, podcasts for individuals and organizations, voiceovers, voiceover demos, video production, you name it, we can do it. And if we can't do it, we know someone who can, but we can probably do it. Anyway, check out the website or follow us on social media. You can even book a free coffee talk consultation with me to discover how ROC Vox can help you achieve your goals. rockvox.com.
Round, go the records.
4.5 minutes after 9 o'clock our time on BBF, home of the busiest bees in radio.
96 WCMF, that unfortunately closes out another edition of Import-Export.
It's because I'm just a schlep on a rock and roll band from Waxy on the #1 hits weekend is 406 with the big racy one.
WSAY Radio 1370. Maureen McGovern. WVOR FM 100 plays 50.
Welcome back to the Rock Radio podcast, where I talk to the movers and shakers and the various people who are making Rochester radio the best radio there is in the world. Is that a little hyperbolic? Perhaps. But today I have Veronica Volk from WXXI and many other podcasts that are associated with WXXI. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really excited for you to be here because I met you a few years ago when we sponsored, was it the One Take Film? No. One Take Film Festival?
We were doing a movies and a microphone talk back, I think, at the Little.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and you were kind of talking about your work in like podcasting, and it was Positive Blatherings, I think.
That's my other podcast. Right. Yeah, so, and then, of course, ROC Vox is a sponsor of the podcast that you're promoting now, the...
It's called Earshot. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
At least I didn't completely blank out.
No, I appreciate that. No, full disclosure. Yes, you are a sponsor of my show, but that's not why I'm here.
That is not at all.
We talked about.
Yes. I've been trying to get you to come over here for years.
That's right. So I'm glad to finally be here, and it's not because of the exchange of money. I have to say that. But no, thanks for supporting the show. We kind of launched it. At a really interesting time for the station. We had just gone through a bunch of stuff with COVID and everyone working remotely and trying to meet audiences kind of in a new way.
Yeah.
You have a moment where like people aren't in their cars as much listening to AM radio. So what do? How do you get your stories out there? So we launched Earshot as a way to kind of fill that gap.
So that really kind of, it piggybacks with what this whole podcast is about, which is really where radio has come from, how it started and where it's going. Because there are a lot of different opinions about that, and who knows who has the right one. And, you really have to have a pretty amazing crystal ball to see, but the way you're using Earshot, that podcast, to sort of bridge that gap, is kind of where everything's going.
Yeah.
So let's back it up a little bit,
okay,
and go back to so you're in radio. Did you decide? Were you destined to be in radio, or did you end up in radio? Were you going more for a journalism and then you sort of ended up in radio, or what was the plan there?
Well, I went to Fordham University in the Bronx, and they had a really awesome public radio station, WFUV, and I was really into the music that station was playing, so I thought maybe I can try to get in there as like a DJ. I can meet all the bands and I can be like a DJ, and it'll be so cool. I
could see that.
I wanted it so bad.
Yeah.
They didn't have any openings in the music department. And they were opening up jobs and internships for seniors. I was not. And so I thought they have openings in the news department, and you get 30 to 60 second news spots on the radio station. So I was like, I'll get in there and I'll make this lateral move.
Yeah.
And, I'll meet all the people and they'll love me so much and they'll be so impressed with my indie music knowledge that they'll just invite me in. But the experience of working for the news department was just life-changing. I was working during a time. It was a really interesting time in New York because it was a mayoral race. Bloomberg was moving away from being mayor. And it was when Bill de Blasio was actually elected. And I remember one of my first stories that I did on my own, I had a kit. I took a train down to City Hall in New York City, and I'm like rubbing elbows with New York Times reporters.
Yeah, that's
and like
wild.
Mike Bloomberg is there. And like,
Yeah.
I saw him on TV all the time. He wasn't necessarily like, I don't know, famous, but in my mind, I was just like, this is way cool. Like I could be here and I could be telling like really cool stories. And then simultaneously, like I'm this broke college student. I have no money for like cable. And I was filling a lot of my time, from an entertainment perspective, like listening to podcasts, listening to This American Life, Radio Lab. A lot of awesome stuff was coming out of WNYC at the time. So I was like, okay, I think I can find a niche here. And the rest is history. I worked for FUV for 3 years, and then I moved up to Rochester, started at WXXI.
Where did you come from?
Originally the Jersey Shore.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts about that? People usually
I
do.
don't have any thoughts about the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, no,
I've never been, so I can't be, I've only seen the show.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, that's what I
hear. It is
hear.
a great place to grow up. And, just kind of centrally located to like New York City and Philly. So a lot of like opportunity to move to a bigger city and kind of find your place there. So I did. And I worked in New York for a little while, but then I was like, I can't make it here. There's so much money in New York.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to make it with $15 an hour working like a couple hours part-time job at a radio station.
Yeah, that's financially impossible. I mean, just the commute that you have to deal with.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that,
there was a lot, and when I was in college, I was living in the Bronx. It's a little bit more easy to make it. Quality of life cost of living is a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. But when I was looking at maybe trying to work at WNYC or, a bigger station, I was like, I have to be in Brooklyn or Manhattan or like closer to the action. And it wasn't going to be feasible. So I moved back home with mom and dad for a couple years or for a couple months after college. And I sent my resume out just everywhere. Anyone who wanted a general assignment reporter, I was looking at them. And actually my current boss, Randy Gorbman at the WXXI newsroom, he knew my old boss, George Bodarky at WFUV. So, we talked. I came up here. My first visit to Rochester, I was like, this is a hidden gem. I've never been to this part of the world, like ever. Yeah. And I was like, it's beautiful. It's thriving culturally. The station has a ton of resources. Mm-hmm. Like, this is going to make sense. And maybe I'll work at XXI for like a year or 2 years. And then, using it as a launch pad to something else. But I love it here.
Yeah.
I love the station. I love the town. I love the people. I love it.
You see, that's an interesting theme that I didn't expect to have here, but with the people that I've talked to so far, everybody, traditionally in radio, it was kind of like, and I know when I went to school for radio, it was like, all right, so I'm going to do, and my old joke is I'm going to go do the cattle report in Wichita to start off, and I'm going to work my way up to, the big market. And so many people came to Rochester, either they were from here and got a job here, or they just came here and it's like they stayed.
Yeah.
This is the place to stay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting.
It's not a bad thing either. I think people they look down on that a little bit, especially people who are born and raised here. It's like, oh, you never got
left.
out, you never left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you seen other places? Like this place is really great.
Yes.
There's a lot of opportunity here. And there's a lot of opportunity in media too, which I'm sure, you're going to talk to a lot of people about. So
I'm from the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area.
Yeah.
So that was ridiculous. Moving up here, my wife's from Webster, so that's kind of how I ended up here. And I'm positive that I've been way more successful and had a way better life than if I were in South Florida. Even though my whole family's down there and everything, but just it's a big concrete jungle. And growing up there, I mean, I didn't even know what the hell fall was until I came here. You know what I mean? I don't like raking leaves, but other than that, and then by the time February rolls around, it's like, all right, or, the end of February, like, all right, let's be done with this. But still, I find myself looking forward to the fall, which I never thought I ever do. I was like a, year-round summer guy. That's it.
Well, you can feel like time change in a more concrete way when you're in a place with seasons.
It breaks it up.
Yeah, it does. It breaks it up.
Yeah.
But it must be like a total culture shock, South Florida, the Rochester area.
I don't know. I did enough travel to see, but I mean, it's just definitely a slower. It's funny because it's a slower life pace, but it's also not too slow that you're like, where the hell am I? Like you're going backwards, you know?
Yeah.
It's the biggest, or was it the smallest big city? Is that what people say?
Something like that.
Some
Yeah.
kind of thing like that.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It's like people want to capitalize on both the big city and the small town, I think, feel.
That's exactly what it is, though.
Yeah.
So you coming from the Jersey Shore, was your goal to work in New York City initially?
I had no idea.
didn't know?
I mean, like the place where I grew up, it's a touristy place. So there's not a lot of opportunity there for, career unless you're going to open a shop or, become a teacher or work for the government or something like that. My dad was in construction. That's another option. But for me, I was like, I don't know where I kind of fit into this. And I knew I liked to write, and I knew I liked, I didn't know I liked radio, but I liked listening to the radio.
Right.
So I really loved music. My family's like really musical. My brother was in a band at the time, and I was like, maybe I can go to New York and make like a career out of music somehow, which 10 years ago seemed possible. And now I'm just like, how would one even really do that? But yeah, I was like, I actually ended up, I was in community college for a couple of years, just trying to figure my life out. And then I ended up going to Fordham, and I immediately started studying communications and media studies, which everybody makes fun of that so hard. But I learned things in that program that I still think about, like to this day, about the way that digital media, but particularly digital media, shapes like our society. And I think it's like, I think I'm working in media right now, and I apply those things in like a really tangible way. And I just feel like there's this arc that happened that I didn't see kind of happening, but it played out pretty nicely. So I wasn't always going to be like a public radio reporter, but I think I was always going to be something in media, something in like digital media.
The one thing I do like, well, I can say the one thing, but one of the things that I do like about your style of reporting, the way you do a story, it's very indicative of like This American Life and the Radio Lab and those kind of podcasts that you're going
to make me blush.
But seriously, there is a theater of the mind aspect to what you do that I absolutely love. Like, I just love that it's more than just a radio report, news report. It's actually a journey. It's a story. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because that is just, it's not easy to do properly.
That is so nice. Thank you so much, because that is really important to me. I mean, like, I can try to like make connections from my past, but my mom is still alive, but she was an English teacher in a past life. And, the written word, writing, fiction, narrative was always like very important. And I think that having a narrative in any story that you're going to read is going to make you remember it. It's going to make you connect with it. It's going to make it more important to you. And in radio, you have to try to do that, because you can tell a 30-second news story on the radio, and it's really easy to kind of chop together and move along. It's more challenging, but also more rewarding to try to weave a narrative into that's going to connect with your audience, that's going to like make your audience care.
Yeah.
And isn't that the point?
That is.
Right?
It absolutely is.
So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm just constantly pushing to like be better at that and do more of that.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I try to advise people when they come here to do podcasts is to have sort of a season arc. I say take the first 10 episodes and try to figure out where you're starting and where you're going to end up for that first 10. And sometimes it's not really possible if you're doing an interview show and you get different people on every week and stuff. Sure. It's a little harder to do, but still to have some sort of journey with the podcast and a story that goes from beginning to end, whether it takes 10 episodes or it's in one episode, I think is very important. And the better podcasts that we listen to, because goodness knows there's millions of them.
So many.
The better ones are the ones that take you on a journey.
Absolutely.
And the new phrase is podcasts are like babies. Everybody can make one, but should they?
Oh my!
Probably shouldn't make one.
Oh my gosh, I'm stealing that. I don't know where that came from, but I'm stealing that. And it's true. And like, I want to like pry you for more podcasting tips, obviously. and you're like helping facilitate that here, right, in these studios. But how do you compete with the millions of other podcasts out there when it's just like we are just swamped with content all the time?
You know, I don't even think there's an answer to that question. The only thing that I advise people is be consistent and persevere, and just like say, I'm doing this for the long haul. I'm going to do my show, and I'm going to do it forever.
Yeah.
Until, I die, because that's what you have to do. You have to commit to that.
Yeah.
Because, to get the lightning strike thing, sometimes you might do something and for some reason it hits, but anybody that has the formula for going viral, send it over.
Right.
And nobody does. There's marketing firms all around the world that make millions of dollars claiming that they know
the secret recipe.
But they really don't.
No.
It's just something that happens in that period of time. Whatever's going on in everyone's life in the world at that moment hits. Mm-hmm. And it just makes sense. Mm-hmm. And to grab onto that is like...
I know. The best advice that I ever got was just make good stuff. And I know that's so simple, but
it's true.
It's so true. Like if the thing that you're making is good, that's like you've already won like half of that battle. I mean, getting it in front of people is its own specific challenge. But once even if you get it in front of them and they're not interested, or it's it's not good, then what's the point?
And the good part is always the hard thing, because I may think this is great, and someone watches it and they're like,
yeah, but other people that are like you will also think it's great, right?
One would hope.
Podcasting is like niche content.
But that's the thing, is if it's too niche,
I know.
It's like, all right, so there's 12 people that really are really into this. You have 12 really good fans, but the other part of it is if it's fulfilling to you and you connect with those people, then that's fine,
right?
Because really going back into it is, it's why are you doing it? Are you doing it to get famous, to get, make money, to monetize your podcast? Some
then
people
you should
can
probably find another job.
Exactly. Some people
we can't
but...
all be the McElroy brothers. That's just like the way that this works. We can't all be like famous. I'm lucky that I'm in a job, I'm in an industry where it's like we have the resources to do this.
Yeah.
And if we can find a way to make this part of your job, then we can invest in that way. But it's like the idea that you would get rich off of podcasting is...
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla or whatever.
Right.
They went into these with a huge following as it was.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So my 1,000 Twitter followers, of which not a one ever responds to any of my tweets, by the way. I don't even know why I have a Twitter account. Such a waste of... How many characters is it now? You should know.
280, I think.
See, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know where.
I know that once you start seeing the red, that's when you have to stop.
That's when you stop? When it's
typing.
in the minus numbers?
Yeah. No, Twitter's a fantastic tool for like marketing if you can really connect with your audience. It's like anything else. It's any other platform.
Yeah.
If people like what you're posting, they're going to follow you. They're going to respond to it. And it can't just be like all self-servy, like listen to my thing. This is a problem that I've had that I've not necessarily a problem, but something I've been thinking a lot with Earshot is I have some followers on Twitter that are just like dedicated fans of my work and the work of the station, and really supportive of public media. Mm-hmm. They follow me because of like my tweets and my stories and stuff like that. But if I just send out a deluge of tweets every day telling them to listen to Earshot, you're going to start tuning that out. And I can't let that be like my whole platform. You have to like maintain your personal brand. Is that what they call it in marketing? Yeah. It sounds gross to say that out loud. It sounds really gross.
Personal brand.
I know. It's silly. In the age of social media.
So you came out of school after social media was already a thing.
Yeah.
And social media was a thing while you were at school.
I was so young that I had a Facebook before I went to college. So it was like past the era where you had to have like the .edu email address to even get a Facebook.
Right.
I was like the MySpace coder generation where we were just like all customizing our MySpace pages. And yeah, social media has been a part of my life since I was 14 years old.
So that's great. So it's really part of how you operate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, though.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, of course. I know. There's the other dark side to it.
right, of course.
But-
Millennials were suffering. But other than that, it's great.
But, you come from a time when it is what it is now, and you came up already embracing it, being part of that culture, whereas me, I was slightly before that,
Right.
Just, when I was in college, there wasn't anything like that, like social media. And it was only just after college did the internet actually appear,
Right.
So there's that idea of being able to adjust and adapt to how things change. And I think you coming from the generation that you are probably better at adapting to those changes.
I mean, I can speak for myself that I think I am.
Yeah.
The whole digital native theory of like kids had access to this, so they're able to more like quickly adapt.
Uh-huh.
I like it, but I also think that there's like a small caveat to that, which is that we didn't have a choice. It wasn't like we had a choice to either turn it on or turn it off.
That's true.
First of all, it was like pushed in front of us constantly. And it was also sold as this beautiful, amazing, life-changing, history-changing thing.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't the internet so spectacular? And we have the world at our fingertips. And aren't these social networks so wonderful? It's a way to connect with all of your friends. We didn't have a choice. I was, we were kids. So it was so much a part of my life, at least, that, like any other part of your life, you adapt, you grow with it. You have a phone in your hand from the time you're 13 years old. You're going to know your way around a phone.
Yeah.
It's just
true.
it like you co-evolve with that technology. And I think it does make me more adaptive, and I try to be. Although I've been told I was out of touch because at one point on Evan Dawson's show Connections, I said that the app Snapchat, if you're familiar, was no longer a relevant app to use. It turns out that it just wasn't for my age cohort, and that millions and millions of people who are younger and more culturally relevant at this point than me are still using Snapchat. So I'm not necessarily like a beacon of technological knowledge.
Well, that was and I'd never even thought about that you didn't have a choice. That's pretty deep. Culturally relevant is a very interesting phrase.
You think?
Yeah, because I've been, when I started doing morning radio here in Rochester, I kind of thought, because growing up it was like the morning radio jocks were superstars. They were famous. They were, and I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to have not the case. I mean, I guess if you're on the right radio station on a show that already has a following, or you have a station that puts marketing behind your show, which helps. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was like that whole culturally relevant. I weighed in on a couple of different things on Twitter and realized that I shouldn't be weighing in on anything that has anything to do with culture. Like, this is not where I should be.
Well, that's so interesting though, that you were like chasing your heroes, right?
Yeah.
Because when you were younger, it was like the jocks. Or the disc jockeys or shock jocks. Is that like
kind of, yeah. I mean, just the talk radio morning show. I really loved this one show when I was a kid, and it was like, morning zoo sound effects and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's what I started doing. And my boss was like, "You do a great show from 1987."
Yeah. I mean, can I swear on your show?
Yeah.
Doesn't that suck? Like, how fucked up is that? That you're just like, I did it. I did the thing that I idolized when I was younger. And they're like, you are too late, my friend.
Yeah.
Like, that was cool years ago.
And so that's my whole beef with radio, is that I was 20 years too late. All of the things that I looked up to for radio, all of the cool stuff, I never got to really, I don't say never, but most of that I couldn't take part of. And a lot of that is changing drastically, especially since the pandemic. That's really moved things forward. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I wanted to talk about, let me switch gears just a bit.
Okay.
As a female,
yes,
in the radio world, in the news world, how is that to navigate?
Okay, so I've had a really easy time navigating that in the world. I especially in the world of public radio in the era that I came up in.
And I think that's if you're going to be in radio, that's probably the best place.
It is.
You know, it's the most accepting.
I mean, for me,
For you.
for me as a white female,
Yeah.
absolutely, because I think we have to acknowledge that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that like I represent like the white female cohort, and there were women before me, obviously, that opened the door for me.
Yeah.
Right? There used to be that you couldn't be a woman in radio because they didn't like the sound of our voices.
Right.
Right. We were too high pitched. We just had all these affectations, and we were just going to make people turn the dial. I didn't have to deal with that. I walked in and we were past that. We moved past that fight. The fight now is fighting for a more equitable public radio that includes people of color.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a hashtag that went around a couple of years ago that's like public media so white. And it's true. And there has been, at least at bigger stations, a reckoning with the fact that it's like has not always been a safe space for people who are not white. And so when I think of my experience has been easy. I mean, I got the training I needed easily. Nobody ever pushed back on me. I mean, maybe if I was perceived as being too young and didn't know what I was doing, that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But nobody ever made me feel like I didn't belong. And I don't think that that's true of everybody. So
Do you feel that it's your duty as a white female to do everything that you can to open the doors for other people who haven't had that opportunity?
I think it's everyone's duty. I mean, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, yes, I do.
Because that's how I feel. I'm a white guy. I mean, you can't get any more privileged than me.
Right.
You know, and I'm a pretty progressive thinking person. That's a tough thing to kind of deal with a lot of times. I never know if I'm saying the right thing because I never want to offend anybody. I never want to alienate anyone. And I come from a generation where certain things that we said growing up, you don't say now. And then in retrospect, looking at it, you're like, you should have never said it.
Yeah.
But we didn't know. We didn't really know. There wasn't anyone, the generation before us.
I know.
You know, it just gets progressively worse as you go by. So
that's one of the blessings of the internet, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? It opens you up to criticism. It opens everybody up to criticism in a way where it's just like, hey, I know that you might not know this, but you shouldn't say these things. You shouldn't do these things, and you're hurting this particular person or this group of people, right?
Yeah, and I think the big problem now is, in my opinion, is there are good ways to say that to folks, and there are bad ways to say that.
Oh, sure. I mean,
And
yeah.
I appreciate the ones that take the time out and say, hey, obviously you're not understanding this, or let me help you to rewrite your sentence. You know, and they do it in a constructive, helpful way rather than, I hate to use the word cancel culture, but that idea of you said something wrong and that's it, you're skewered.
Well, no, I mean, nobody likes an internet troll, of course.
Well, yeah, the trolls are.
And I'm not going to presume to speak for anybody, but I think that there is like a sense of just like mental exhaustion on the part of people who are doing work to make progress in our industry, in the country, right, at large. Yeah. Where it's just like, dude, how many times do we have to tell you?
Right.
How many times do we have to tell you that you can't say this or that you shouldn't treat people this way? And I see it, I'm just going to speak broadly and generally. I see it in our industry in the way that stations are staffed, right? If you look at positions that are more forward, they're typically people who are white and who come from privilege. And so I've been thinking a lot about how do we create a pipeline of people into radio. First of all, getting people to work in radio in 2021 sounds crazy.
Right.
But let's start there. And then how do we create a pipeline where we invite people in who didn't go to Fordham University and go work at FUV, which Fordham University, if you don't know, is a gated community in the middle of the Bronx. And if you didn't go to that extremely white college experience and go into an extremely white public radio experience, how do we invite people in, and how do we make it a safe space for everybody? And how do we encourage opportunity and growth? Even from right here in Rochester, how do we foster young talent, people who want to go into media? How do we prevent them from looking at Rochester media and saying, I don't have a place here. I'm going
Right.
to go somewhere else. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about.
That will.
I don't have any ideas just yet, but
I was going to say
Let
that
me know.
that's a challenge.
yeah.
That's a real challenge. I know that I've tried with this business to donate my time to different organizations and different causes, to give them the opportunity, like to do a podcast where they normally wouldn't have that chance and they wouldn't have the voice.
Yeah.
And, to do it on that kind of scale and especially thinking about people working in radio, wanting to work in radio in this day and age. And that's kind of where I was leading with this is where do you see it going and how do you see it evolving from here?
Well, I think that I'll start by saying I think the best thing to happen to radio is podcasts. And I know that podcasts have been around for years and years and years, but I see, particularly with people in my age group, us digital natives, consistently using more apps to listen to their radio, whether that's like, a podcast app or a radio app or, whatever, listening online. And I just think that we have to embrace and also continue to innovate the digital space to make that make sense for people. Right now, WXXI has an AM station. And I think that's great for everybody who listens to AM. I've never listened to AM radio in my entire life. Not one time. I think that maybe there was a time when I was trying to listen to something that we were doing. Maybe it was like an election night or some breaking news coverage. And I actually had to teach myself to go to the AM station in my car because I'd never done it before.
Wow.
Now, that's just my personal usage preference.
Sure.
But I do listen to podcasts all the time. My friends listen to podcasts all the time. People are like plugged into their phones. This phone is where people are getting their content. And how do we get to them here? So that's, I think, the direction that radio is, first of all, already started to go and needs to continue to embrace and innovate and, make it better and make it interesting and make it easier. Because otherwise, people they're just going to stop listening. And, you'll have your music streaming apps, you'll have your video apps, and there's, where do we fit into the in-between there?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that really sad?
It can be.
Yeah.
It be just splitting the difference between, music radio and talk radio / news. That's one of the things that I've seen the decline in for music radio. Anybody can, you can get Spotify or Pandora or wherever and have all the music that you want, whatever you want to hear, and listen to it as much as possible. You don't have to, not like back in the day where, Bon Jovi had a new song out and we had to wait to hear it and then try to record it,
I was just talking to somebody about mixtapes the other day.
Really?
Yeah. What an amazing time to be alive.
Mixtapes.
Well, just real quick on that note, we were talking a little bit about the cultural relevance factor before, and I just want to say that for the record, I did say that Snapchat was irrelevant, so I am not the arbiter of culture. I know this about myself. But I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, it's gone. What were we talking about? How it's sad that radio is going away.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You did too. Wow. I'm so interesting. I'm boring myself. Anyway, just to say that I don't think it's sad. I think it's an opportunity. And I think we should hurtle towards it.
Do you consider yourself more of an optimist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. And it's not just because I've worked my entire adult life in this industry and I'm not really sure what I would do without it. I just think that there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential. If you listen to shows that are really good at what they do, if you listen to podcasts that are extremely entertaining, you'll love that shit. They love that shit. That's not going away because it's just this beautiful way of telling stories or joking around or, getting really in depth on an issue that maybe you care about, or maybe it's a surface level pop culture thing, but people love that stuff. And I think that if we just continue to do better in the digital space, we'll be fine.
That's true.
Is it?
Yeah, it's as simple as that. And that's why I asked about, your outlook, because for people who are optimists, who look for the positive side of things and say, how can we make this better? How can we make this work? Or you have the cynics or the realists, I don't know, pessimists, everybody else that says, and I've seen it this way too, where, the radio is dying because it's all centralized and you have one show that's on 100 stations and you don't have the local connection with the DJs and the personalities who are out at the mall, doing the remotes and stuff. That's the part that I'm sad about.
Yeah, it is.
But
it's so different.
I'm having to sort of come to terms with the evolution and say, okay, well, so it can never be that way. You can't walk down the street and go to your local haberdashery because people don't wear hats anymore. It's just, it's not.
I know.
So I have to kind of convince myself that, all right, it's just changing. It's evolving into something else. And like you said, if these companies that are owning everything could focus more on the storytelling and that stuff.
Yeah. So can I give you an analogy?
You can.
Okay. I was just watching The Social Network today, and there's this scene in that movie where Sean Parker, played by Justin Timberlake, is talking about how Napster brought down the entire music industry. Mm-hmm. And that is true, but it's not, right? Because Napster changed the way that everybody listens to music. We all stream music now. And even if you pay for your streaming service, you're still streaming. Napster did that. But people still make music, right? Like people are still, like Rochester bands are still getting in recording studios and recording EPs and songs. And they're still playing shows. And we still get to enjoy that. Like the industry had to change. But, whether that's for better or worse is somebody else's opinion to me.
Yeah.
But there are people who are passionate about it, who are talented. They're still doing what they do. And people are still, like, eating it up. So I think that just because radio has to change doesn't mean that people won't still make good stuff. And won't still make good stuff that people want to hear.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. It's becoming almost better for those who are the creators. That's it. Yeah, I'm actually gonna.
Do you believe that?
I'm just gonna. I had to like retract. you saw that? It hit me like a bolt
did.
of
You were
I
like,
was like,
wait a
a second, that's not true. It's not better because there's more noise. It's harder for you to get your stuff out there.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
See, I learned something today.
You have to compete with the entire internet.
Yeah.
I was talking to our photographer, Max Schulte, about this at one point.
Very, very talented guy.
He's awesome. He is incredible. But we right now, WXXI does not have a TV presence, like a local TV presence. We have our channels that we play like syndicated stuff from PBS and other stations. And we were talking about what we could do to create something like original that could be on YouTube or something. And Max was talking about how when his kids watch YouTube, they're not watching local programming because YouTube has anything that you want, the highest production of anything that you want. Why would they watch something that we put together when they could watch like something that a much more robust organization could put together? And that's what we're in. That's what we're in competition with all the time. All of us.
Yeah.
We're in competition with everything and everybody.
I remember when my kids were, they were probably 6, 7, 8, somewhere like that. And they were watching YouTube. They were watching videos of kids opening up presents.
Unboxing videos.
Is that what they're called? There's
Yes.
an actual genre now.
Yes.
They were watching videos of kids playing with toys.
Mm-hmm. Kids' YouTube is next level weird, dude. It is so strange. But yeah, yes.
So, and I can't tell you how many people ask me, what do I have to do? We were talking about this before. What do I have to do to get noticed, to get my, and it's so easy for people to lose faith in themselves. And then there's the whole, aspect of it where, kids, girls with Instagram and how they're having such a terrible self-image. But the amount of noise and the amount of competition that everybody has It's just
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So what is it? What are you guys doing to? You still trying
Hyper
to-
local.
Yeah.
That's my plan. Hyper local. Because what can we do that nobody else can do? What can WXXI do that NPR can't do? We can tell stories about Rochester.
Yeah.
And we can hopefully tell really good stories about Rochester and the Finger Lakes and the Great Lakes and, regional stories like that. They don't have the resources to send reporters up here, right? I mean, they do occasionally, but that's what we can do. That's the service that we can provide. If we can tell good local news. And sometimes those stories are good and they resonate with audiences that are outside of Rochester. NPR often picks up stories from local reporters and plays them on the national broadcast. But that's what we got going for us that other people don't have. And so that's what we got to keep doing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
What do you think? What are you thinking right now? You seem like upset.
Do I?
A little.
No.
I don't know. I was wondering if this conversation took a turn, that it was just
no. So
starting to feel less optimistic and
no.
more
The way I do
realistic.
The way I do podcasts, for better or worse,
Yes.
is I go in without an agenda.
Oh yeah.
And I just go in to have a conversation and see where it goes.
That's cool.
I oftentimes learn things. I oftentimes learn that I was, my opinion was wrong, or I learned that I didn't even understand my own opinion. But that's actually what happens most of the time.
You're learning and growing. That's amazing.
That's why I do this.
Yeah.
Then I hope that other people will enjoy the people that I'm talking to. So if I seem that way, I'm just thinking. Okay. I'm just saying, okay, what, and also trying to recognize the fact that I never started my timer.
That's fine. Let's
So
just go.
we're at 40 minutes. Let's go.
That's fine.
I don't have
love
anyone telling me how long the podcast has to be either.
Isn't that the beautiful thing about this place? Is about this space in the digital world?
Yeah.
We could sit here for 3 hours. I mean, I'm not sure that anyone would listen to that, but we could.
We could.
We could
totally
go total rogue and just be 3 hour long podcast. We shouldn't do that.
Right.
But we could.
I have to pick up my kids at 5:30. So I think
I like what you said about not prepping, by the way. I try to prep as little as possible, except when I'm going into an interview with an academic.
Yeah.
And I have to try to be a little bit up to snuff, be a little bit of an expert in their field just so I can ask the right questions.
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely.
I also try to just talk to people. I think that's the best way to get it, kind of natural reactions.
Yeah. I really never know where any of these conversations are going to go.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of it. Sometimes I find myself going, I probably could have used a little bit of, I probably should have put a little time into this one, but most of the time I come out pretty pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been trying to do is put together a local Rochester history podcast.
Oh.
And there's not just one, I'm not the host. Mm-hmm. Whoever wants to do a show can do a show.
I just had 6 different ideas
right
into my head.
See, I should work with you more.
No, I think that's really cool. Because it's that same, we were just talking about, that brand of hyper local.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what one of the things that I'm always thinking about is how did this road get its name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Craig Road.
Yeah.
Is there Craig family around here? Are there people that still live here that have that name? Or is it just a guy that, happened to be the first one here?
Sure.
Or just named it after his grandfather?
And, you ask 2 questions about it and you find that there's either a story there or there isn't.
Right.
Yeah. So I did a story not that long ago that we actually just replayed on the podcast last week about the Highland Park Cemetery. Mm-hmm. Did you know the history of this place?
No.
Highland Park?
No.
So it was actually the site of a mass grave for the Insane Asylum Penitentiary and Almshouse on South Ave. And I had no idea. There were hundreds of people buried in the middle of Highland Park. I had no idea. And the whole story started because I saw somebody tweet about it. And they were just like, hey, here's a cool, spooky, maybe not cool. Maybe cool is the wrong word. It's a keyword for that later. Interesting, kind of semi-spooky in the realm of Halloween stories thing about this place that we all go to for the Lilac Festival. And I looked into it, and it turns out that this, the guy who originally excavated the place was still in town. There's a guy that wrote a book about it, about like what happened at this insane asylum. And like, there's like, I don't know, it was a story that fascinated me. And I was like, okay, this is great. And when you talk to me about like a history podcast about Rochester history, I mean, you can find stuff like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be like, oh, it was just a guy named Craig who had a lot of money or whatever.
Right.
And then sometimes it'll be like, oh gosh, I'm so glad that you asked me about this because here's this crazy, crazy story.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to do one of those, just shoot me an email or something, because anyone who wants to do that can do it.
I have an idea, but I can't. I don't want to say it on the podcast.
That's fine. That's fine.
But yeah, and I think that would be also an excellent opportunity to like highlight a bunch of different voices, right? Whoever has like a story that they want to tell and wants to do maybe their own original reporting or that would be really cool.
I not to turn this podcast around about me or anything.
Let's do it. I've been answering questions for too long. I'm sick of myself.
So this upcoming summer, 2022, I'm going to be working with the Rochester Museum and Science Center.
Awesome.
I'm going to do a week for their summer camps. We're doing a week-long podcasting camp.
Oh, that's cool.
We haven't announced it yet. I'm hopefully.
I guess you're announcing it now.
Yeah, I'm announcing it now. Although I don't know when this is going to post, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I haven't posted any of these yet. But it's going to be something where for that week, we get, I think it's like 15 kids or something that we're going to give them sort of the run of from start to finish how to do a podcast. And I've been wanting to put something like that together. I was actually working with another organization to try to do it for inner city kids and lower income families, because they really don't have the opportunity to even go to the museum camp. It's a lot harder to put those things together than I thought.
Yeah.
You
mean from like a bureaucratic standpoint?
From that, and just from the idea that I'm a small business and it's just me. So if we're going to do something like that, I don't have a staff to work on it. It's got to be me.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with one way. My first step is to work with an organization that already has some of those things in place so that we could do that.
Well, I mean, when we talk about like the pipeline, that is helping
exactly
that to that end, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do.
What's your curriculum look like?
I don't know yet. We only just decided that we were going to do it. I have to actually put that together.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were going to do is have speakers come in. So you might be getting an email from me asking you to come
I'd
come
love
talk.
to. That would be great. Yeah, no, I'm so into that kind of stuff.
I figured.
Well, I did work with elementary school kids at one point in, like practicing recording, and they were putting together a podcast for their class. And I thought it was so cool because I was like, oh my gosh, they all have recorders.
Right.
Everybody has their own recorder now.
You have a portable studio.
You don't need a kit and like a mic and all this stuff. You can absolutely have that because we probably sound better than if I were just like recording this back and forth on my phone. But you don't necessarily need it to get into it. And I just think that that's so cool. It's
kind of like back when I was a kid and I used to sit there with my tape deck and say, WFTZ Fitz Radio,
Yeah.
The kids are doing that now. My kids are always, or were always, now they're teenagers, so now they don't do anything.
They do. They just don't tell you about it.
Exactly. But they were always doing these little movies with their toys and making these little videos and stuff, which I always thought was cool. That creativity is the part that really excites me about this space, about podcasts, about internet video, YouTube, stuff like that. Is that really? There's no limit to what people can do. It's all, their limit is their own imagination. And I think that's great because traditionally the broadcast side of things has always been very limited to what the management and ownership thought was appropriate or thought was good or would sell or would be interesting. Where now you can do whatever you want. And granted, some of it's like, but a lot of it is really amazing. And you see some incredible talent.
Not to mention the fact that like the technical aspect of the job used to be out of reach for people. Like I don't think I could run like a board like an engineer does. I mean, I maybe could try, but yeah, now if you have access to like your iPhone, you have a movie studio in your pocket, and it's like super user friendly. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
The kids are all right. They're going to do great.
That's true. That's true. Well, I think I've covered everything except for what's ahead for you in the next, say, 5 years. Do you have any overall goals that that you're shooting for? Or?
That is a great question. I wasn't. I didn't think I was coming to a job interview today.
How have you exceeded your own expectations in
What
the
are
last
your
5 years?
Strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Okay, so I talked about the pipeline, creating the pipeline. And, you know, the work that you're doing or planning on doing with the podcast camp is something that I'd like to see WXXI get more involved in too. Bringing in, you know, interns from city high schools or starting programs in local schools that would at least introduce young people to the platform itself. And hopefully from there, anyone who's passionate and can see the potential in it can pursue that and have WXXI be a guide in that. And other than that, you know, I want to make Earshot really great. I want to keep making it better. And I'd love to see XXI do more digital podcasting. Just because, you know, I find it so rewarding to work on those kinds of projects, but also I'm really hoping to open up WXXI to an audience that doesn't know we exist. You know, I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn here, but I had a friend who interviewed with the DNC once, and this was probably 5 years ago, and she said that their marketing strategy was geared towards Gen X. And she ended up being so blown away by that answer because it felt like, you know, if you're shooting for Gen X, you're already missing the boat. You need to shoot for younger audiences. And I want WXXI to be relevant and to make content for younger audiences because I do think we provide a valuable public service.
Yeah.
But if the people who are consuming the most content are not coming to us because we don't have anything for them, then we're not really utilizing our full potential.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like Twitch streaming or TikTok or
I want to watch you play Minecraft,
making
Veronica.
unboxing videos. But, you know, I think if we can tell stories to a younger audience and deliver it to them where they are, then I think we would be doing a good job.
Yeah. I would love to be involved in anything like that happens. Keep me in mind.
Well, let's talk then.
I've through Beth Adams, I've pitched a couple of ideas that just there was no place for it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing is actually finding a place for some of these hyper local things, hyper local stories or something. But that's what I really enjoy. I love what you guys do at WXXI. That's what I listen to in my car constantly. If it's not an audiobook, it's 1370.
Yeah.
And you know, even for the 7-8 years I was in radio in Rochester, that's always what I listen to.
Well, thank you. And what I want to make sure that we do is instead of continue to ride the coattails of like a good reputation, I want to continue to live up to that and innovate on that. And, you know, bring more people into that, you know, make more people have that reaction. Yeah. Because I think I want WXXI to be around for a long time. I certainly would like to have a job in the next 5 years, 20 years.
I want you to have a job too.
And in order to do that, I think we have to continue to try to inspire people to be members, be listeners, be an audience of our stuff. And we just have to keep striving for better and for more.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I really, really had a great time.
So did
chatting
I.
With you.
So did I. This was really fun.
Yeah, like I said, I admire your work. I love what you're doing. And Rochester is so lucky to have you. And I'm glad that you love it here because we get to enjoy your work for years to come. And I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for creating this small business. I don't know what it's been like for you in terms of like personal journey, but like this kind of thing is beautiful and brilliant. And I love to see it in Rochester because this gives people an opportunity to come in and make content and like, you know, start their own journey, like make their own like dreams come true, not to be totally cheesy about
Yeah,
it.
come on. Make your dreams come true at ROC Vox.
But I mean, seriously,
should
like
change
this
it
is
from
great.
mouth off.
This is an amazing place
Thank you.
to have that our community can have if people want to come here and start a show on this platform that we obviously believe in. That's beautiful.
That's why I'm such a supporter of WXXI and why I try to underwrite things, because that's where I feel like my best customers will be, you know, hiding in that space.
Right.
So
Podcast enthusiasts
yes, so
that are
cross my
in
fingers.
Rochester. Wow, that really is targeted advertising if you think about it.
Very much is. So how do people follow you?
I am on Twitter at Volk Veronica. So it's just my name, but like flipped around. And yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter. And obviously Earshot is on our website, WXXInews.org.
Boom.
And you can follow it and find it and download it and subscribe it wherever you find your podcasts. We're on all the platforms
You've said that before.
once or twice.
Thanks so much for coming in, and
you.
look forward to more.
Awesome. Thank you so much.